What's going on, y'all? Welcome to the Triple Z Podcast. I'm your host, Isaiah Henry. The NBA postseason has come to an end, and the Denver Nuggets are the 2023 NBA champions. For this episode, I wanted to do a playoff recap discussing certain performances we've seen in this year's postseason in the NBA, ranging from best to worst, disappointing, surprising, etc. There were certain teams and players that had certain performances that caught my attention, and I'll start with teams first. The Boston Celtics didn't really have a great postseason. I thought they had the worst performance as a team overall. They were a team that made the finals last year, was one of the favorites to make it this year, and for them to have a 5-6 record at home was just horrendous. With two All-NBA players, a great supporting cast, they really did underachieve this year. And then to be down 0-3 to an 8th seed, Miami, in the Eastern Conference Finals, win 3 games in a row, force a Game 7, lose a Game 7 on your home court. It just proved to me that Boston wasn't ready to win a championship just yet. And when your two best players shoot a combined 13 of 36 from the field, 2 of 13 from 3, your chances of winning a Game 7 becomes very, very slim. Denver, by far, was the best team in the playoffs. They showed you why they were the number 1 seed in the West. They're a team that plays for each other. For them to keep the same core of players for all these years and finally achieve their goal of winning an NBA championship, the first one in franchise history within 46 years, it must be a special moment for them. Denver has a lot of players that plays their best basketball when the spotlight gets bright. Bruce Brown can come off the bench, change the momentum of a game. Aaron Gordon takes on the responsibility of guarding the opposing team's best player, ranging from Karl-Anthony Towns to Devin Booker, LeBron James, Kevin Durant, Jimmy Butler, etc. KCP, before Denver won, was the only player on that team with championship experience, with winning with the 2020 Lakers in the bubble. So having a player that knows what it takes to win it all is always a plus to have on your team. Jamal Murray, for him to bounce back from his ACL injury and show us when healthy he's able to play at the highest level, it was amazing to see. And not only is Jamal Murray starting to emerge as one of the best point guards in the game, he's making a case that he could be a top 20 player, maybe even a top 15 player in this league. So I'm looking forward to seeing what he does next season. Then Nikola Jokic. He's the best player heading into next season. For him to be the best player on the best team and average 30, 13, and 7, it's remarkable. I compare him to Tim Duncan, a humble superstar, doesn't have an ego, everyone loves him. With Nikola Jokic, he can have a stat line of 0, 5, and 2, and as long as Denver wins, he's happy. He can also have a stat line of 50, 12, and 10, and the first thing he's going to do is praise his teammates and praise his coaching staff for putting him in a position to have a great game. Mike Malone had an interesting quote after Denver won their championship. He said the last step after winning a championship is to become a dynasty. And Denver has all the tools and assets to become a dynasty. They're great. They have great players. Nikola Jokic, 28 years old. Aaron Gordon, 27. Murray, 26. Michael Porter Jr., 24. They have a great young core of guys that's knows what it takes to win now because they have a championship. The Lakers had an underrated playoff run. They started the season 2-10, had very low chances of making the playoffs, lacked defense and shooting, had their best players, LeBron and AD, miss a lot of games. They also had players like Russell Westbrook, Patrick Beverley that didn't really fit well with the team, and they also had ample amount of different lineups to see what works well for their team. And for them to flip their script after the trading deadline was very much needed. I think we have to give a shout out to Rob Pelinka for making the necessary adjustments to make the Lakers significantly better over the course of the season. Lakers were able to beat the Memphis Grizzlies, who have a great young core, and then beat the defending champs at the time, the Golden State Warriors, then ultimately lose to the Denver Nuggets in the Western Conference Finals. Lakers had a lot of great moments in their playoff run, and they really are maybe a piece or two away from making even a deeper playoff run next season. So down in the 305, Miami Heat definitely surprised a lot of people. Lost their first playing game against the Hawks, then won their second playing game against the Chicago Bulls and capture the 8th seed. To capture the 8th seed and not have any type of home court advantage in the playoffs and advance to the NBA Finals, it was very surprising to see, and I like how Miami were able to overcome the odds in the playoffs. Clippers were a disappointment, and I only say that because of injuries. It seems like forever since we've seen Paul George and Kawhi Leonard on the same court in the playoffs. When it comes to those two players, it's going to be hard to win playoff series when your two best players aren't on the court. And with Kawhi Leonard specifically, Kawhi Leonard has the ability, the skill set, the talent to be the best player in the NBA. And I can understand why people can't put him in that category yet because his one weakness is availability. The best ability is availability, and when your best player isn't on the court, it's going to be hard to win some basketball games, especially in the playoffs. So I can understand the frustration from the Clippers organization and the fan base. Miami versus Denver was an interesting matchup in the finals. A lot of people said it was boring to watch, but yet it was the most viewed finals in the last 5 years. The reason I found it so interesting was because of the storylines that could have been made for either team that would have won. Now, I know Miami lost, but if Miami did win, the storylines would have been, is Jimmy Butler a superstar? Where do we rank Eric Spoelstra amongst the greatest coaches of all time? How do we feel about an 8 seed winning the NBA championship? Where do we rank Jimmy Butler's playoff performances historically in the NBA? Now, since Denver won the NBA championship, most of the conversation is going to be, where do we rank Nikola Jokic amongst the greatest big men of all time? Is this the beginning of a dynasty? Is Jamal Murray and Nikola Jokic the best duo inside the NBA? So I just love a great storyline that can be built for certain teams in the NBA. Now, transitioning into players' performances, individual performance, I'll start with worst again. And this may be obvious to some people, it may not be, but I'm going to say Dillon Brooks had the worst performance in this year's playoffs. He averaged 10 points, 3 rebounds, 2 assists, shot 31% from the field, 23% from 3. Now, his performance overall was just terrible, atrocious, we get that. But for him to do all this talking about LeBron James being old, he doesn't respect players until they drop 40 on him, it really did bite him in the ass in the end, because LeBron James basically had 40. He had 22 points and 20 rebounds, and now Dillon Brooks is not even on a ball club. So I think he had the worst performance overall as an individual player in the playoffs. Nikola Jokic was the best player in the playoffs. Now, a lot of people will say, well, what about Jimmy Butler's performance? He was great. With Jimmy, the more Miami advanced in the playoffs, the more his performance started to decline. Now, opposed to Nikola Jokic, the more Denver advanced, the more Nikola Jokic started to play better. Nikola Jokic in the regular season, 25 points, 11 rebounds, 9 assists. In the postseason, 30, 14, and 7. Shot 54% from the field, 46% from 3. First player with a stat line of 30, 20, and 10 in the finals game. Not only did he show you that he's the best big man in the game, he showed you that he's the best player in the world. Now, someone that had an underrated performance in the postseason, there may be some bias because he is my favorite player to watch in the entire NBA. Austin Reeves had a very underrated postseason. He was inserted into the starting lineup midway through the season. For him to be in his first postseason, averaged 17, 5, and 5, 46% from the field, 44% from 3, as the third best player on the Lakers behind AD and Bron. It was something special to watch. Now, the Lakers did get swept by the Denver Nuggets, but in that series he averaged 21, 7, and 5, 56% shooting from the field, 55% from 3. Austin Reeves is only going to get better as a player, hence why he's in talks for signing a contract worth $80 million to $100 million over the next 4 years. Jamal Murray surprised me with his playoff performance. Like I said before, for him to bounce back from his ACL injury and play the way he did was everything that Denver needed for them to win a championship. He had 30 points in a half, 23 points in the fourth quarter. He was the first player with 4 games of 10 assists in a row with 0 turnovers in the finals. That was something amazing to see. In the regular season, he averaged 26 and 4. Postseason, 26, 7 and 5. He was nothing but sensational for the Denver Nuggets. Joel Embiid was a disappointment, named the MVP, averaged 33 points a game, dominant on both ends throughout the regular season. For him to go out the way he did in that Game 7 against the Boston Celtics, 15 points, 5 of 18 from the field, that wasn't a true MVP performance. It seems like Joel Embiid was only going after the MVP, while Nikola Jokic was going after something that was a higher achievement. So it's very disappointing to see Joel Embiid go out like that. Hopefully he can come back and have a better performance in the regular season and in the playoffs, so we can have a different perspective on him. Now, for player versus player matchup, I think it's pretty obvious LeBron and Stephen Curry was probably the best matchup we've seen in the playoffs. Two of the most iconic players we have in today's game haven't played against each other since 2018, and they did not disappoint. What I'm going to remember specifically about these two players matching up against each other was when Stephen A. Smith said if Stephen Curry wins his 5th NBA championship, just his 5th, meaning that someone else can win Finals MVP, we will have to have a discussion as a basketball community removing LeBron James off the Mount Rushmore and replacing him with Stephen Curry. What I didn't understand about that was Stephen A. Smith on multiple occasions has said LeBron James is the second greatest player of all time. Out of everyone on your top 10 list, you decide to pick LeBron James, the second greatest player of all time, to be removed off the Mount Rushmore. That didn't make any sense to me. But we all know who won that series, and rightfully so. But
thank you guys for listening to Triple Z Podcast. Thank you to Kaylee Haynes for helping me with the script, and we will be back with more content. Zzz.